It's about time I went to Bath for an episode of Cover to Cover. So for episode 4, we're going to be going to Mr. B's Emporium. If you are new to this series is a series where once a month I visit a different independent bookshop on the search for the best independent bookshop in the UK. Now, full disclaimer, I absolutely love this bookshop. I have been already. You may well have seen it in previous videos. This is probably my favourite independent bookshop, so I'm a little bit biased, and I was considering whether it was fair to include it in this video with that in mind. I decided to include it because this video does have the rating system, and at the end of this series I'm going to look at which bookshops did rate the highest. However, the rating system is just for fun, as I say every time. All the bookshops are ranking incredibly high on it because they're bookshops. They're great. It's just for fun, and for that reason I didn't want to feel like I couldn't go to Mr. B's because I already knew it was going to rate high, because the point of this video series is to show you loads of independent bookshops. If you're not able to come to these bookshops yourself, I want to be able to take you on a tour of them, and if you live nearby and you maybe didn't know they were about, I want to be able to show you them. That's the point of this series, is to just highlight a love for independent bookshops. So I don't think it matters that I've already been here, but I have already been here. I love it, I know I love it, so I do have a bit of an idea what to expect. Mr. B's describes itself as an innovative bookshop with quirky furniture, a reading booth for rent, and free hot drinks. Honestly, it's such a lovely bookshop. It's a really nice vibe, and I can't wait to share it with you. As always, when I visit this bookshop, I will be looking for 4 different things to be able to form an overall rating out of 20. These things will be atmosphere, shop layout, staff recommendations, and book selection, with a further 5 points, 5 bonus points available, depending on what I rate the book that I buy in the bookshop. I usually have a bit of an idea of what kind of a book I want going in, but I'm not really sure this time, so we'll see what I come out with. I'm intrigued because I think I'm just going to tell them what I like and just go from there. The booksellers in Mr. B's I already know are so on it with recommendations. They have given me countless recommendations in the past, so I have no doubt that they'll do a great job of it this time as well. I'm introing this video a couple of days before I'm actually going, so I may change my mind and want a more specific recommendation when I get there, but for now I think I'm just going to let them know what my reading tastes are and see what they come up with. I'm so hyped about this episode and just generally this series, and I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying it, so I hope that you enjoy episode 4, A Trip to Bath and Mr. B's. I bought some books. Every time I go to one of these bookshops for this book series, I tell myself I will buy the one book that I'm going to read and maybe like one other book, obviously, that I will also read, but the one book I'm going to read for this video, and then maybe one other book. I didn't do that. And I'm not even surprised at this point. I don't even know how many books I did buy, but I was in there for 2 hours. So I've got a haul for you, and I've also got to give you the overall ratings for this bookshop. Right, first up, I bought this edition of Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater. Now, oh no, it's bent at the back, wait. Oops. Now, I did already buy this. I had this pre-ordered for ages because this is one of my most anticipated releases of the year, but the edition that I have is the standard bright green one, which is like this green as the main cover, and then the pink, I think, is the font for that one. I'm not a fan. I love green. Green is one of my favourite colours, if not my favourite colour, but I just wasn't a fan of it. I much prefer this one. I don't love either covers, to be honest. I'm not a massive fan of kind of bright neon fluorescent colours. I love bright colours, but I don't love the kind of neon-y tones, so I'm not a massive fan of the colour choices for these covers. However, when I saw this one, I preferred this one to the green one, so what I'm actually going to do is return my green one and keep hold of this one. I feel like that's a good plan. Also, this one's signed by the author. It's a win-win, and actually, hang on, under the dust jacket, I can't remember if the green one has this or not, but it's really cool. It has a quote that says, "She's the devil, I thought, taking one last glance at the oozing shards of snail shell." It's really great for someone like me who's not a big fan of snails. I know that snails are going to be a big part of this book, or at least one snail is, but it'll be fine. Also, end pages are pretty cool too. This is meant to be quite dark and unsettling, and the tagline at the top of it says, "Would you kill for a good story?" I keep getting ads for this when I'm listening to podcasts at the moment, which has me even more excited about it. It says, "Roach, bookseller, loner, and true crime fanatic, has no interest in making friends. She has all the company she needs in her serial killer books, murder podcasts, and her pet snail, Bleep." Bleep's a pretty cute name for the pet snail, I'll give them that. That is until Laura joins the bookshop. With her cute literary tote bags and sunny smile, she's everyone's favourite bookseller. But beneath the shiny veneer, Roach senses a darkness within Laura, the same darkness Roach possesses, and as curiosity blooms into morbid obsession, Roach becomes determined to be part of Laura's story, whether Laura wants her in it or not. I think it sounds really cool. So I got this one as a kind of already had it, but gonna return that edition that I already had. So that was book number one. A couple of the books I bought I did buy for specific videos that I'm going to be filming coming up for reading vlogs. So I'm not going to go into details about what that video is going to be, but it might be pretty obvious from some of the themes within the books that I have picked up. One of them is Wranglestone by Darren Charlton. This one was highly recommended to me by one of the booksellers. I think it's part of a duology, I want to say. I'm quite looking forward to this. This is an LGBT epic zombie dystopian YA novel, and I'm ready for it. I feel like these kind of books often read quite fast and quite compelling. It's been a while since I've read a YA like this as well, so I thought I'd pick it up. The bookseller said it was absolutely fantastic, so I bought it. Another one I picked up is A Tidy Ending by Joanna Cannon. This one, the bookseller, as soon as I said I was after a recommendation, didn't even say anything else. I had 3 different booksellers recommending me books in this bookshop because I went so early in the morning that I was just able to be in there for ages. It was pretty quiet because it was midweek, and I was able to just chat to them for ages, so I was having so many different recommendations. But the very first mention I said of I want a recommendation, one of the booksellers walked off and picked up this immediately without me saying anything else. So I'm going to take this with very high praise. On the front it said, "Linda loves a puzzle. This one's proving hard to solve." I did see this as I was walking around and didn't pick it up, so I am now intrigued to see what I think of it. The blurb says, "Meet Linda. Linda lives a nice normal life on a nice normal street with Terry, her perfectly ordinary husband. Linda's not like everyone else. She keeps herself to herself, but she's good at solving puzzles, and there are times she sees things other people might have overlooked, because nothing on Cavendish Avenue is quite as it seems. People have started to go missing in the neighbourhood, and Linda will soon discover that some secrets can't stay buried forever." Apparently this is an absolutely fantastic thriller, and it's one of the best thrillers that the bookseller that recommended it had read, so I'm excited because I do love a good thriller. This is where the theme might come a little bit apparent of one of my coming reading vlogs. This is World War Z by Max Brooks. I didn't actually realise that World War Z was a book. I haven't read the film. I've watched the film, haven't obviously read the book yet. Apparently this is told in a journalistic style following on from a massive zombie apocalypse and how the world is dealing with that in the form of a journalist report. I'm intrigued to see how this is done because it's kind of going to be looking back on the history of civilization during this point. And I'm very intrigued because apparently the film just saw a flicker of what we actually get to see in this book. I read the first few paragraphs whilst I was trying to decide which books to buy because I had a stack of about 10 next to me, and this definitely hooked me in immediately. I like that the tagline is an oral history of the zombie war because again it kind of gives it that non-fiction but it definitely hopefully is a fiction vibe, so I got this one. This next one I'm very intrigued by. This isn't one that I would have ordinarily picked up myself. This is Greenwood by Michael Christie. This one sounds really interesting, but I also have no idea how to describe it properly. I feel like the bookseller described it to me more intriguingly than the blurb does. The blurb is incredibly short. It says, structured like the ring of a tree, this remarkable novel moves from a futuristic world in which only one forest remains to the start of the 20th century where two young boys survive a train crash, setting them on a path that will forever change their lives and the lives of those around them. So the way that the bookseller described it to me is that each ring of this tree is a different year that we get to see. That rhymed. And it sounds very interesting. Obviously it's going to be an environmental based novel and looking at what we've done to our planet. It's been compared to Richard Powers, who has written The Overstory, which I do also own and is on my TBR. The short chapters in this make it very compelling apparently, and it's definitely very addictive. But what I think really sold this for me is that the bookseller that was with me the longest and recommended me so many books, they were genuinely amazing. They all were in there. Like, the booksellers in Mr. B's are what makes that shop amazing on top of so many other things, but the booksellers are just absolutely fantastic. But they said that if anyone ever comes in and chats with them and is kind of talking about the art of writing getting lost and it's not what it used to be, this is the book they recommend to them. So I'm really, really intrigued to see how I find this one. This is a never-ending haul because I got quite a lot of books. I also bought Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This is one I have seen about the place a few years ago, and I completely dismissed it because I based it on the cover and I thought that's not really the kind of book I would want to read. Now, when I was chatting away to the bookseller, I kind of said, I personally at the moment am feeling really slumpy with just generally the act of reading, which is a sucky way to feel right now. I just feel like I'm not picking up books as often as I used to, and I'm not sitting down and having that dedicated reading time. I'm getting so distracted, my brain is so busy and I don't know what's happening. Like, I'm always reading a book, I've always got a book on the go, but I used to finish a book every 4 days and now I finish a book like every 2 weeks. It's just bugging me because my reading pace has changed so much purely because I'm getting more distracted. It's not linked to busyness because I still carve out that time in my day to sit and read. I'm just getting so distracted that my brain just reaches for my phone more often than anything else, and that is annoying me. So I was talking to the bookseller about that and saying that I think I'm picking at times books that aren't grabbing me enough because maybe I'm going for something that's a little bit heavier and more serious than what I actually need when I just want something that's going to be compelling and make me want to pick up the book and enjoy it and have fun. And he picked up this and I was immediately like, oh, I don't know if that's going to do it. But then he just started describing it to me and he said it's kind of satirical and like a spoof of itself, but not in a totally stupid way. And then I actually read the blurb and now I feel like I should have picked this up sooner. Glory never gets old. Clay Cooper and his band were once the best of the best, the most feared and renowned crew of the mercenaries this side of Heartwild. Their glory days long past, the Mercs have grown apart and grown old, fat, drunk, or a combination of the three. Then an ex-bandmate turns up at Clay's door with a plea for help. The kind of mission that only the very brave or the very stupid would sign up for. It's time to get the band back together. Apparently it's very funny. It's non-stop fantasy action, brazen fun, and a rock and roll sensibility. Absolutely awesome. An outstanding debut. This book has it all. It sounds fun and I feel like I should have picked it up sooner. Plus, not that this should be a massive selling point, but it is. It's very floppy. So that is nearly all of the books that I bought. The final one is the one that I'm going to be reading for this vlog. Now, I was having trouble picking which one to read for this vlog because obviously I bought quite a lot of books. But I was chatting to the bookseller and I was like, which one would you say if you could pick one specifically for me to read for this vlog, and I was explaining it, which one would you go for? And the reason they picked this one that I'm about to show you is because they said that they think when you go to an indie bookshop, The perk is that you are getting very personalised recommendations, and you are getting books that might be unique to that indie bookshop and the booksellers that work there. And I love that way of thinking about it, and I think that's definitely what I have observed so far from each book that I have purchased from each of the books in this series. They've all been incredibly personal to the bookshop that I've been visiting and the booksellers that have obviously shaped the books that are on offer there. And I think that swayed me to pick this one, because this one was the one that he was talking about in the way that it felt so unique to this bookshop and the interest they have and the hand selling of these books that they do. So it made perfect sense to read Spoonbenders by Daryl Gregory. I actually started this one last night and I am obsessed with the writing style. It flows so well, it's so entertaining, and you know when you have that feeling like you're literally falling into your book and nothing outside of you can like come into that, you're just there. I have not had that feeling for so long, and as I spoke about earlier, I'm getting so distracted and I feel like the little bubble I had for reading has expanded to pull in all these other things like my phone and like just doing other things, watching TV, doing things that are distracting me from reading, things that I used to do outside of that bubble and had separate time to sit and binge a TV show. Now I'm getting so distracted by all of it. So the fact that this book allowed me that space to hone in on it and just really enjoy it, massive plus. It's already winning. The description of this book does not do justice what this book is about. It's utterly unique, very funny, and just, it's so good. I mean, not that the blurb doesn't make it sound like that, but I'll read you the blurb and then may expand on that a little bit. The year is 1995. Meet the Telemouches, an apparently ordinary family with strikingly obvious issues. Their individual personalities are eccentric, their intergenerational relationships are strained, their collective failures are well documented, and their finances are, well, let's not even go there. The city is Chicago. For grandson Matty Telemachus, this is just the way things have always been. The only person who ever tried to convince him otherwise is his hapless uncle Frankie, who rushes to retrieve that videotape every time he consumes too much red wine at Thanksgiving. The family is dysfunctional. This cassette is proof that the family, Grandad Teddy, Grandma Maureen, Aunt Irene, Uncle Frankie, and Uncle Buddy, were once known as the amazing Telemachus family and toured the country with a magic and mind-reading act. That was until one fateful night in 1974. So is the magic. Spoonbenders is the legacy and legend of an extraordinary, normal, entirely unique family across 3 generations of big personalities and socially inept recluses, each cursed with the potential of being something special. Now, what this book doesn't really go into the detail of so much, but is immediately apparent when you start reading it and is a massive selling point for me, is this family, each individual member of this family appears to have their own ability. So we've got somebody that can astro project, somebody that can tell if someone's lying, somebody that can tell what's in a piece of paper that's in an envelope so they can kind of see through the envelope and understand what's on the piece of paper. I think somebody can control metal. I'm still getting used to what they can all do, but it's basically this family of people that can do all these amazing things, and it's kind of got like a little bit of an X-Men / Heroes vibe to it, which is my favourite thing. I love when fantasy systems have that kind of specific magic power type thing. Sorry if you can hear the dog barking in the background. This book obviously reads as a contemporary. Well, it's set in the 90s, but I refuse to call that historical because no. So it reads as a contemporary. It doesn't read as a fantasy at the moment, but I'm only about 100 pages in. But I'm really intrigued to see where this goes. I'm really liking it so far, and it's just fun, and it's just very simple and easy at the moment. You're meeting these people, you're seeing their lives, and their lives aren't necessarily easy lives, but the writing style itself is very easy and it flows very nicely, and you can really see the relationships forming between them. There was quite a few different people to remember who was who to start with, but I think I've got it now. So I'm really liking this, but this is the book that I'm going to be picking to read from Mr. B's for reasons as stated earlier. I feel like this represents the taste of Mr. B's, but honestly, just that bookshop, I love it. So let's go on to the actual ratings for the bookshop. I forgot to show you one other thing I picked up in Mr. B's. I got this top. I got an extra large to sleep in, and it's so comfy and cozy. I've gone in a couple of times wanting to get one of these and they hadn't had them in stock, so I was very excited that they had them now. Starting with shot layout, this is the one that I have been the least certain of what I was going to rate it, and I've really had to think about how I view future shot layouts as well, based on my dilemma here. So the shop layout for Mr. B's is fantastic. The baths in the middle of the main sections of the main floor are a fantastic way to display some of the key books instead of just having them on tables. I love the fact that it's not only a local nod but also a great way to just change up the displays. That's fantastic. That's really unique. Generally, the way that each room is laid out, it's got a pretty big space around each bath for you to be able to maneuver around. When it's busier, it does get a little bit tighter. There are narrower areas of the shop to maneuver around, but there is always enough space if you do need it. There is a fantastic children's section in Mr. B's that has the best layout. It's got such a cool design. It's kind of blue purpley colours with gold accents. It feels like a midnight forest vibe to it, and I just love it. It's got such a beautiful open space to it, and it feels like it's a whole other shop, and I just feel like it's such a nice layout and area for children to have access to, so I love that section. Every area of Mr. B's feels like it's winding around a different corner, and it's really easy to be able to visualize where each category and section of books is in your mind. There's actually 3 floors to Mr. B's, and I only went to the bottom basement floor for the first time for this video. In that bottom floor is non-fiction that's like historical, political type of non-fiction, and I think a few kind of biography type of things down there. The top floor has a real mix to it, so that's got kind of arts and music type of books, photography stuff up on the top floor, as well as some travel bits. It's also got some dedicated sections for recommendations, so the booksellers have picked their favourite books and books they would like to recommend, and they are all displayed there on the top floor. There's also a beautiful reading room, which is a really lovely space, and there's 2 armchairs by a fireplace that are used for the book spas. The book spas are sessions that you can book out that I believe last a couple of hours and are all around personal recommendations, so you get a specialist time with the booksellers and they're able to help you out pick some books, and it's just generally a bit of an experience. It's a different type of book shopping experience. It is a book spa. Look into it if you're interested, because I'm probably not doing it justice with my explanation, but there's a section for that as well on the top floor. All the sections in Mr. B's are really open and bright and light and airy, and it just feels like such a nice space. The reason I was deliberating what to give this out of 5 is because I didn't know whether to rate it down because you didn't have the access to a lift. However, it's not the bookshop's fault that you don't have that access. It's the way the building is laid out. Obviously, if there isn't a way to be able to add that lift in, if there isn't a lift already in the building, that is not the bookshop's fault necessarily. That is just the space that they are in, and they are doing a really good job using the space they're in. So with that in mind, I just want to let you know that if you do visit this bookshop and you aren't able to go up the stairs, you will not be able to go to the top or the basement floor. But the main floor has so much to offer, and the layout is fantastic. The booksellers are great, and they really do try and mirror what they've got on the top floor and the atmosphere of that top floor with what you can access on the main floor as well. So I think with that in mind, it's a fantastic layout. I'm rating the bookshops themselves, I'm not rating the buildings, and obviously they've done the absolute best they can with that building to make a fantastic shop layout. It's a 5 out of 5 stars for shop layout. Book selection, fantastic. Fantastic. This bookshop is always on point with how many books they have, the range of books, the level of popular books mixed with lesser known books, and just so many different things on offer. They have a mega collection of graphic novels. If you are there for that kind of thing, you are sorted. There are so many, and there's so many fantastic recommendations from the booksellers for those as well. The children's section has a whole stack of graphic novels, which my sister loves. There is a fantastic section on sex positivity. There's a huge YA section, fantasy section. There are so many different areas in this bookshop. There's a whole shelf dedicated to Terry Pratchett's beautiful edition books. Just generally, there is so much here, and there are so many different types of genres to explore and books that you might not have seen anywhere else, and that is what I love about Mr. B's, as well as obviously what I'll go into in a minute is the booksellers' recommendations, working with those book selections. Every year my mum goes to Mr. B's and tries to find me books that she thinks I'll never have heard of for Christmas, and every year she does a perfect job because Mr. B's just offers those kind of books, along with the books that are obviously popular books and the books that you will have seen in Waterstones, for example, as well, but they've got such a good blend. It's got to be a 5 stars for the book selection. It's fantastic. The atmosphere of the shop, again, I just bloody love it. There's a reason that this is my favourite indie, and yes, as I said already, I'm going into this a little bit biased, but the general atmosphere of this bookshop is amazing. It just feels like such a homey and welcoming and wholesome bookshop, and I literally spent 2 hours in there, so that is testament to the fact that the atmosphere is perfect. Everything about this shop builds towards creating a fantastic atmosphere from it, from all the little nooks and crannies that you've got to the baths and the general way that the shop is decorated, to just the welcoming, cozy feel of it. It feels like home, and I absolutely love it. And it's a 5 out of 5, obviously, for atmosphere. That leads us on to bookseller recommendations, which I just think this bookshop is never going to be trumped for. The bookseller recommendations in this bookshop, the effort they go to. Granted, as I said already, I think I was going very early in the morning. It was on a Wednesday, so it wasn't particularly busy at the time I was going, and that is why I went at that time. When I asked them if they were happy for me to film in there, I did check what would be the kind of best time for me to come, because obviously if I'm filming, I don't want to feel like I'm getting in people's ways. That was the best idea, because I was literally in there for 2 hours. I was chatting away to the bookseller for probably about 1 of those hours. I'm saying the bookseller, multiple booksellers. I had 3 different people give me different recommendations at different times, because they each kind of looped each other in, like they acknowledged that someone else had a specialist in that and then got them over to recommend me a book, which I just think is great, because that means they've covered all the corners, and they definitely had covered all the corners. But their amazing candid approach to just chatting about the books with me. I had a fantastic discussion with one of the booksellers about Sarah J Maas books and the sex scenes in books, and just generally how those kind of things are shaping literature, and it was such an interesting chat to have. And I love those kind of conversations that you can have and those connections that you can make with booksellers, and I just think it makes the trip even more special. These booksellers always recommend me books I've never heard of. They always listen and understand what it is exactly that I want, even if I don't know exactly what it is I want. I think I said at the start of this vlog, I went in not really being very sure, and I left with a massive stack of amazing books. So it's no surprise that the bookseller recommendations gets a 5 out of 5 for me for Mr. B's. It's just bloody brilliant. I absolutely adore this bookshop. Mr. B's Emporium of Reading Delights is of course one of my favourite independent bookshops. I will continuously go there every single time I am in Bath. I think the booksellers are fantastic. Their recommendations are always on point, and I just love the vibe of this bookshop. It feels so wholesome and so homely and so welcoming, and just everything a good bookshop should be. So Mr. B's is currently sat at 20 out of 20 for its total score, which is obviously no surprise. It got 5 out of 5 in each of the different categories. If you are ever visiting Bath, I would highly recommend checking out Mr. B's. It's great. I can't say it enough, and I have said it a lot. So the final 5 points up for grabs is now very much resting on Spoonbenders. This is obviously the book I'm going to be reading for the remainder of this vlog, and whatever I give this out of 5 goes towards a total 5 bonus points for the overall rating for this bookshop. Burt's Books in Swindon last month received a total of 24 points. 4 of those points were from the book that I bought, which was Changeling, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. So this basically either gets 4 stars to draw with Burt's Books, or above that to take the lead. Obviously anything less than 4 stars and Burt's Books is still sitting in top spot. Now as this stands at the moment, I'm getting 5-star vibes from this. That could all change. I'm only 100 pages in, but it's exactly what I needed at this time. It's fun, it's easy, it's interesting, and I'm really enjoying the reading process of it. And it's exactly what I think I wanted without knowing it was what I wanted, which just shows how good the booksellers in Mr. B's are. So at the moment, it's sitting around there, but that could all change because I am only at the start of it. So let's see what I give this book overall and what Mr. B's comes out as out of 25. Okay, I have finished Spoonbenders. This book took me for a ride I didn't expect to go on. I felt slumpy at the start of this video, and I didn't really know what I wanted to read. I wasn't really having the dedicated reading time anymore, and I knew that that was becoming a problem in my head because I love reading, it soothes me, and I just wasn't feeling like I was having that time to sit and do it and to sit and fall into a book, and none of the books I was reading were giving me that excited feeling to sit down and read as well. Even though I was enjoying the books I was reading, I still didn't have that excitement to sit down and read. Cue Spoonbenders. This book, it has definitely, I'm sticking with the idea that it's got like an element of heroes about it. It's got this fantasy element where everybody in the family has their own different abilities, and there's this big catalyst that you know you are building towards, and you are getting pieces of information from each different character that we follow in each different chapter to kind of get an overall idea of where we're going, but each person's involved in a different way. So you, the audience, the reader, are piecing together each little thing you know to try and create this overall story, because nobody is giving it to you as one straight narrative line. So this kind of adds not a puzzle element to this. It's an easy read. It doesn't really make you have to think too much, but it does add a kind of a second layer to the plot itself. I loved reading about these characters. This family dynamic is certainly a chaotic one, and I really enjoyed discovering each individual characteristic of each of the different characters and how they each differed from each other, but how they still had this bond and this unity as a family together. My favourite character to follow was Buddy. The chapters that we got for Buddy were much shorter than the other characters, so I felt like there was a lot more intrigue surrounding Buddy as a character for me because we didn't get as much as we did the others, so I always wanted to know more, which I think was a clever writing technique as well, because we literally cycle through all the characters every chapter, like we follow a different character until we get back to the last one, so you do have to wait a little bit before you go back to your potential favourite character. But I think that's clever because I think it strings you along more. I used to not like it when books did that, but I think if it's done well, I think it works really well. The fantasy element of this was really fun. It was a bit different. It was a kind of play on psychic abilities and exploring a different way to use those in fiction, and I really liked that side of it as well, the way that it played with the dynamic of an American family and their experiences from childhood to now with these abilities and what these abilities actually meant in the grand scheme of things. There was a real power play going on as well between a lot of the characters here. Some great women characters, really fantastic feminist themes throughout this as well. I really enjoyed this. Like, this was really, really good. I didn't expect it to make me feel emotional at the end, but it did. So it's achieved that as well. Generally, it was brilliant. I said, I think in the last clip, that this was verging on 5-star territory. Now, I was nearly going to give it 4.5, and then the ending was so epic and so gripping that I've given it a 5 stars, which means Mr. B's Emporium of Reading Delights is at 25 out of 25 as their total score. They're at a full score. They're top of the leaderboard. I actually went back into Mr. B's yesterday because I was in Bath for the Bath Festival, and I was speaking to the bookseller that recommended me this, and it was so nice to be able to say that it was an excellent recommendation and that I loved it, and we had a good chat about it because I haven't really seen anybody talk about this anywhere, so I haven't been able to speak about it with anyone else, so being able to have a chat with the bookseller was really cool, and I let them know that I'd given the whole experience 25 out of 25, so I feel really good about that. I mean, I know it's my favourite bookshop. I'm probably biased, but I should have a count as to how many times I've said the word I'm biased in this vlog. Regardless of all of that though, it's a damn good bookshop. The recommendations are amazing. The staff are fantastic. It's just so good. I was actually chatting to Mr. B yesterday at the Literature Festival because there was a Mr. B stall in the main venue for all the events. And he was saying that one of the things that he finds so important when hiring booksellers is the love of books and the love of chatting to people, and those two things together are just like the biggest assets they have for their bookshop, and I think that is so damn apparent when you visit. It's such a lovely space. I'm gonna stop singing this bookshop's praises now because that is what this whole video is for, but 25 out of 25, that's the score to beat. I've really enjoyed filming this episode of Cover to Cover. I hope that you have too. If you have, please do give it a thumbs up, comment down below any future bookshops you would like me to visit. You can subscribe to see more of these kinds of videos on your feed, and link down below you can find my Patreon and my online shop. Thank you so much for watching, keep smiling and stay positive.